Hello, everyone, and welcome to Navigating Chaos, a modern mental health podcast. Welcome to our Pride episode with Queer Eye's Jay Rodriguez. Thank
Hi,
you for being here.
thanks for having me.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
I'm here with Dr. Johnson, and we will go ahead and get started shortly. Hey, everyone. We'd like to remind you before we start that this episode is not meant to be a replacement for your own personal mental health care and intervention. If you resonate with anything in this episode, we urge you to talk to your therapist if you have one, or conversely, find a therapist if you don't have one. Keep in mind that we do cover some sensitive topics, so we ask that you be aware of your limitations, but also encourage you to be brave in exploring uncomfortable subjects. Thank you for being here, and enjoy this episode of Navigating Chaos, a modern mental health podcast. Jay, welcome. And I have discussed with you before about, and we'll talk about it here as well, about how you were kind of the only, you and the other four guys were the only like representation that I had. And obviously this being Pride Month, we want to really focus on the mental health aspect of media and LGBTQ plus representation in the media. So what does Pride mean to you? I'm curious.
To scroll back to what you said, I mean, it's interesting. 2003, the landscape of LGBTQ plus media was non-existent. I'm looking at the cover of Entertainment Weekly, which the Queer Eye guys and I were on in July, would be 19 years ago. And it says, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, our behind the scenes sneak peek at the summer's outrageous breakout hit. Plus, what's next for gay TV? That's how our focus was, you know? And certainly 5 people could not represent the entire tapestry that is the LGBTQ plus community. And so there was a lot of weight on our shoulders that at 23, I didn't recognize. Certainly just having a job that was televised and being our most authentic self was groundbreaking at that time. Now, as a community, we expect more because we have embraced as a society, LGBTQ plus issues at large in a more broad way. And we are expected to be reflected in a way that at my age, at 23 in the early 2000s, we didn't expect it. Any small crumb of visibility, we ran toward because there were no other options. So sometimes it's really tricky getting into conversations with younger folks at Prides when their expectation is through the privilege they have of the shoulders in which they stand on and the many giants before them who came before the experience they're having now with the freedoms and the visibility that they so easily sometimes take for granted. You know, it just wasn't accessible. So Pride to me is like an ultimate family reunion because unfortunately the LGBTQ plus community, and I say this a lot to companies I work for that want to do a Pride event, we are an incredibly segregated community. It's very rare there are spaces that you'll find in the LGBTQ plus, I'll say nightlife, where everybody's there. It's usually this type of folk or this age or this demographic listening to that kind of music. It's how it is. It's a shame, but at Pride, we're all together at the same place, having to see how we all navigate our lives differently. And I think that's one of the benefits of Pride is being able to, A, remember that it started as a protest, B, hold space for those that are different within our own community, that are not within our bubbles. And lastly, I think what it does is kind of remind us how full, rich, big, and diverse our community actually is. Because still in entertainment, we only see slivers of communities that don't intersect with mainstream often.
Wow, that is so many sound bites there. I think sitting on the shoulders of the giants that came before them, like that's, you know, it's disheartening when, you know, younger gay folks don't know who Marsha P. Johnson. I mean, we're doing our part, and you're right. It is a shame that we are all segregated within our own little marginalized community. have you seen, and so you're the environment that you're in LA, um, you've been out in Dallas recently. Did you notice any difference between the two?
I kind of I didn't get to explore much. I went to the roundup. That seemed pretty diverse. There were all ages, all body types, certainly all nationalities. I think I saw a good array of gender there. Um, I think country music, or the way it's displayed there with two-stepping and stuff, was an interesting way to break the mold. I mean, I didn't care who took me around the floor two-stepping as long as they led,
Mhm.
which was kind of beautiful in and of itself. At the event I went to, I was there to raise money for local HIV/AIDS organizations with this incredible event that was basically like a fashion show, but that was sort of the upper echelon of Dallas socialites and allies who happen to be part of the community, or allies, like I said. So that was a different vibe. And it was a last minute trip, just a charity thing. So, I mean, I don't know. I feel like you'd have a better window in. And certainly I can speak for Los Angeles that we are still pretty, there's a little bit of everybody everywhere, but we certainly have different strokes for different folks. Different parts of town represent different types of communities. Some who feel alienated from the mainstream queer culture, or I should say gay culture, that seems probably the most elitist, that was usually governed by fit, white, mask presenting gay men, sort of set up these institutions where that was top of food chain, whether that was done through the marketing, who they choose to bartend, to dance, and throughout the years, they realized their patrons demanded more. They wanted to see themselves reflected in their spaces and at least feel welcomed by the advertising at the very least. I know that for nightlife here, when I used to be more of a fixture of it, there was times where I would be the host, Emmy award-winning, trailblazer, whatever you want to call it. And they were like, we can't make you the primary image, because if we did, people would get confused and think it was Latin night. Like
Oh,
that in
wow.
and of itself was innately a deterrent, because we weren't trying to draw those kind of folks, or we won't want to alienate our base. That kind of language was so freely tossed around. And when you look back at how we're marketed to, especially in the early 2000s, even up until the 2010s, I mean, it was different. Thank God, I feel like this younger generation has really taken the lead on how they want to see the world, and have taken to social media and been quite vocal about it. You of course get pushback because change is tricky for folks who've been doing it the same way forever.
And even the new Queer Eye cast is more diverse
I was
than
definitely a diversity hire. I replaced someone. They knew they wanted to go
really.
ethnic. I think I was safe ethnic, white passing. I think at that time I had a lot of resentment that, all the things that I intersect with, whether it was at that time maybe not being as mask as I might present today, being Latin, being slender, being overtly gay, being somewhat sexual, you had to imagine that that was not what companies wanted. And seeing my Queer Eye brothers get $1 million endorsement deals, book deals, and I couldn't get any movement in any of those arenas based on my identity, not because I thought so, but because literally that was the feedback. We just
Mhm.
don't think, we what would we do with him? Like, Taco Bell, like they were limiting you to your how they could market you, and how they could market you is what they boiled you down to.
Mhm.
So, I think about the jobs that I lost for speaking up about errors in a script that didn't depict the community well. I think about the producers who were like, I don't know what you're thinking. Like, you're never going to become the next Antonio Banderas. Like that was top of food chain. Like that was the goal. Like I couldn't achieve anything more than that, because he was the apex of what a Latin person could do. Now we have so much more visibility as all the communities I represent, and we're not so scared to ask for what we think we deserve and what we know would be vital to our success and as communities. I think, no one's ever been asked to be treated better than, it's just equal then,
Mm.
as equal
Mm.
as.
Wow.
Even
Alan, do you have any
dating when I
questions
moved
so
here,
far?
well, I
Yeah.
mean, like even when I moved here, like guys would come up to me and I would think they liked me. And if they were white, I mean, I remember the first weekend I was here, some guy was like dancing with me and I was so tickled because he looked like a Sean Cody model. And at the time that was like a score. And I remember him turning to me and like yelling in my ear because the music's loud at the club. He's like, "You're pretty hot for a Latin guy. It's not normally my thing." And it sounds crazy now, but at the time, even though it turned my stomach, I didn't necessarily see so many people speaking up about that at the time. So I took it as a, oh, that's good, I guess, you know, and just thinking about that now, it's sad, you know, and I feel like now that would just make the record scratch. It didn't then. I mean, it was just that language was so kind of tossed around so frequently, it wasn't even a thing.
Wow. Alan, do you have any questions?
I was just curious, given, as you said, ideally things are getting better in general with the younger population, of course, more diverse, wanting to see a wider representation. Not that anyone necessarily wants to lead the pack. You know, it's nice when it's already the path that's already been laid out for us, but just out of curiosity, how much do you feel like you influenced some of that change by being that ethnic hierarchy? Again, not that you wanted to be that, but being a representation for so many folks that didn't see themselves on TV until that point.
I've been in so many rooms and offices and TV shows since we had shows like Love, Victor, where a Latin queer character is #1 on the call sheet. Yeah, the actor's straight, but that role didn't exist in television, certainly not at #1 on the call sheet back when I was during my Queer Eye days. And I would like to think that a part of that is folks like me, Wilson Cruz, Guillermo Diaz, who were taking on these smaller supporting roles back in the day to kind of allow people, the broadband, who are writing these series and understanding who we are, our journey, and our capacity as actors, to be able to imagine a world where an audience would love and crave to see that kind of character depicted. I mean, I remember dating Dr. Johnson. You wouldn't be the first, not that we're dating, but you wouldn't be the first person that I know who's a doctor. I dated one for 3 years. We moved into this apartment together, and I was queer. I was referenced in his textbook as moving society forward in terms of acceptance, because we subversively snuck in a message by the exterior being, we're just making your lives better. And we were talked about by the President Bush, who didn't even want us to marry, but was fine having us around. Donald Trump wanted to do an episode, so we did an episode with Donald Trump. Like, people who didn't necessarily support LGBTQ plus issues were quite comfortable around us. It was sort of, we got a pass. Pre-social media, I'm sure there wasn't backlash that we saw. However, I'm sure it existed. I'm sure there was a dark underbelly of the populace that thought we were gross and disgusting. But even my mother's church friends, she went from, oh, pray for him, you know, he's in the city in that musical Rent, to when her friend said, I saw him on TV, and she suddenly had this ownership of my queerness that was like, oh my God, yeah, you know, I'm fabulous. I told him everything he knows. And that shift was due to Queer Eye. It was due to the cultural acceptance of it, and celebration of it. We were quite celebrated, which kind of put me in this weird bubble of thinking that that time in life where queer folks, you know, getting married or having children, and that being an issue, was a thing of the past. I did a movie called Oy Vey, My Son is Gay, where a town gets upset that we adopt a baby and get married. And I thought it was so dated. And then I look at the times today and I see these issues that families are facing, mirroring that movie that I did 13 years ago. So it's wild to me that we are kind of going backwards. And someone said it best, sometimes you can go 4 steps forward and then, you know, be pulled 6 steps back, and then just to be propelled forward even further. So I definitely know firsthand, because I've seen it. I've been around long enough to have been a part of it, to understand that there were a lot of copycat shows. There were a lot of characters on television, scripted or otherwise, that liked having a Latin queer person. And I'd like to think a small teeny kernel of that has to stem back from folks like me who were doing it when it wasn't popular. For context, Sean Hayes, who played Jack, wasn't out of the closet when Queer Eye was on. He was on Will and Grace. Not out of the closet. Ricky Martin, closeted. Adam Lambert, closeted. Lance Bass, closeted. So people like me really took big hits in our career in the early 2000s because people were like, you're queer and there's a limit to what an audience will accept, even though you're acting.
That's powerful. And now we have shows like the reboot of Queer as Folk that you just went to the premiere of, and Modern Family, Schitt's Creek, The New Normal, things like that. Just curious, what's your favorite like show now or piece in media now that you kind of resonate with, or that you appreciate more because it gives more of a message?
So I love what the younger generation is doing. I love family programming. I would consider, Love Victor, which I'm currently binging, secretly, because I see so much of myself reflected in this character for the first time at almost 43. I'll be 43 in a week. And like, that's the first time I see a character like me, how I was. I mean, he got to date and have sex in his teens. I didn't, but like, a lot of the same emotions and the upbringing kind of mirrors my upbringing. It's the first time I saw that. So I'm immediately attracted to that show. But even seeing Queer as Folk and having that be a window into the world that I lived in. When I first got kicked out of my house and did Rent in Canada for a year before Broadway, the woman that kind of took me under her wing was a woman who happened to be a trans woman who served in the military prior to her transition. And every night after the show, she would make me a brown cow, which is Kahlua and milk, and have these special wings she'd go and get from the deli every single night. And we would just stay up and talk. And so in many ways, I was raised by so many trans folks and non-binary people before we had language for non-binary, when my friends would just kind of say they were androgynous, and I just think about how the work I did, whether it was in Rent or Xanadont, prior to Queer Eye, I thought the whole world was like that. I thought there were more folks in spaces that were like my New York City bubble. And when I got into Queer Eye, I realized that even queer people, gay people, can be transphobic, can not want to learn, can have a hard time with pronouns, can see the world as black and white, which was a tricky lesson.
And Dr. Johnson, I know you work with people struggling with gender identity as well. Do you see how big of a shift have you seen just in like with your patients that's due in part by these people that helped raise Jay?
I'd like to say that it has improved, of course. I think just giving the fact that there is more representation in the media, even if it's just people are talking about it more. So in the media, in the sense of it's in the news, unfortunately, sometimes it's negative, but it's being talked about more. And so, for a while, people might have been, it's okay to be lesbian or gay, but they didn't understand the bisexual thing. Like, okay, well, we understand the sexuality thing, but we don't understand the gender identity thing. Now it's okay, well, we understand trans, but what is this non-binary or gender queer? And so, unfortunately, there's still we keep having to take steps to get closer and closer, but at least that conversation is continuing. So at least I'm heartened that the dialogue is continuing. Some people are going to be very rooted and not want to have that dialogue at all. But I am happy to see that there is more understanding, because even as Jay said, even within the LGBTQ plus community, there is a lot of divide, a lot of separateness. And so even though we're all under the same umbrella, sometimes there is, we'll say, hate towards other alphabet letters. And so hopefully we continue to have that dialogue and merge together and unify versus diverse, like push ourselves against one another, which we're already dealing with enough outside of that umbrella. So why is it that we need to do that infighting as well?
And Jay, so let's take the beginning of your television career, saying that's Queer Eye, right? That was your first.
Sure, that's like
your first major one.
Yeah.
Take that, and then now the most recent major thing that you've done, and comparing and contrasting the two.
So when I first did Queer Eye, the big decision was, are you comfortable being out on camera? And that was a conversation my agency had with me. I had already played a drag queen in Rent. I played a non-binary character in Xanadont. I had played an inner city student, though, in a play at Lincoln Center opposite an actress called Hope Davis, who was a big movie star, who was now on a big TV series. And so I had worked as a straight guy. I'd done a couple episodes of All My Children as a straight young dad. So I was working in both spaces, and my agent was like, this is a little show, no one's going to see it, it's on Bravo. By the way, at this point in Bravo history, no one knew what the hell a Vanderpump was. Like, to me, a Vanderpump was the thing I would do late at night to James Vanderbeek in my mind before bed, you know what I'm saying? So like no knowledge of what Bravo is today. So I took it with that assumption. This is going to go nowhere. It's going to be a little extra pocket change, and that'll be it. When it turned into a huge show, I was having issue with it because I had to now be out, and I knew that would cut back on my opportunities. The producers of Queer Eye thought it'd be wise if all of us were represented by the agency that represented the brand Queer Eye. So we had a meeting with them. That is the agent who told me, I don't know what you think you're going to be. You're not going to be the next Antonio Banderas. And I realized they wouldn't push me as an actor because that was the end of the road for me. And what they would push me for would be cartoon, caricature, stereotypical things that they thought aligned with my identity. But I took the job anyway, and that was the outcome. And it took years for me to kind of legitimize myself again as an actor. Thank God for people like Ryan Murphy, who allowed me to audition for Nip Tuck, got the guest star on that episode. The title of the episode is Chaz Darling, which is my character name. It's season 5, episode 5, if anyone wants to watch Nip Tuck. And after that, they were like, oh, maybe we should give him a second look. I took Queer Eye off my resume, grew my beard out, got the tattoos I always wanted. I was governed in Rent, governed in Queer Eye. You can't change your hair or your body without getting permission. So kind of came into my own. My first series regular pilot was for the CW. It was called HMS. It didn't go to series, but I shot it, and had it gone, I would have been on it, for the duration. It was like Felicity meets first year Grey's Anatomy. And I kept booking things. And then I became the first guy to garner fame from reality that became series regular on a scripted network series with Malibu Country, which is a sitcom I starred on with Reba and Lily Tomlin and Sarah Rue and Justin Prentice from 13 Reasons Why. So it was really incredible moment in history. Ran for 1 year, but that was like 9-10 years ago. And ever since then, I've been mostly just recurring. But the role that you're talking about would be playing a straight guy playing a straight bro in the movie Bros. And when I submitted my audition, I remember doing it begrudgingly, like, they're fucking not going to hire me. Like really just kind of being in my head because I thought they would use my identity against me, even though I knew my audition, I killed it. I felt like I killed it. And what I didn't know was they were looking to have an entirely LGBTQ plus cast, even in straight roles, but not as a gimmick, not as stunt casting. They wanted to prove that folks in our community are quite capable of being storytellers, regardless of who their character chooses to love. That being said, sent in the thing, didn't hear anything for 2 months. Got a call. I pulled over to the side of the road and started crying because I realized how much time had passed and how we evolved and grow. And the fact that, Judd Apatow is producing this, Nick Stoller, who directed Getting Sarah Marshall and Get Him to the Greek, was a co-writer, producer, and director, and Billy Eichner is the big star, and I'm playing a bro, and people are like, how? I'm like, I went to high school, I remember. But I also play straight men often in television. It's just probably on the show that's been running 4 years and you stopped watching. But I also am one of the stars of an upcoming Netflix series, which airs at the end of July. They're doing a big press announcement, I think, this week. So at the time of this recording, I can't say the name, but maybe by the time you publish it, I can. But it's a huge, giant, massive showrunner creator that is a household name, is it? And the household name is the big lead. And I'm in 3 out of the 8 episodes. And that was great. And I just did a big guest star on Fantasy Island, which is going to air this fall on Fox, which started the tarantula obsession. Because I have one, and my character has a scene with one. So, a lot of the times I realized some of the stories I was telling myself were based in truths. How I react to the truth that's in front of me is on me. And so now I realize there were a lot of defeatist attitudes and vibes I took on that might have not been beneficial in my journey as an entertainer, because I really went in doubting that the right thing would be done, that I'd be cast or whatever for roles, because I think I was so in my head, like, they're never gonna blank. And I guess Getting Bros kind of disproved that. And I'm hoping that kind of vibe continues. To be honest, I actually tested for something yesterday that I'm hoping to get. So I'll hope to have more news for you all soon. But that would be series regular, a gay, which I'm fine. I don't think Meryl Streep wakes up every morning thinking, I need to play a lesbian to validate myself as an actor. When I was growing up, they used words like pigeonhole. So you pigeonhole yourself as a gay actor. I don't mind telling queer stories for the rest of my life, as long as the role is juicy and multifaceted. You
Mhm.
know, I don't mind peppering in straight roles. I don't feel like it limits me. I think that it would limit me would be someone judging good work and saying, because you're a queer man, you can't play that, not because you're not capable, but because I know who you love.
Mhm. When they
I would
allow straight
I would
men.
say I would say who you have sex with, but we both know that's been just a real drought for me. So
And
maybe
well,
Dr.
they allow
Johnson
straight
can
men
help
to
me
play
out.
queer men as well, and queer
Well,
women.
and let's talk about that. So this is what I know straight folks are like, but acting is acting. Here's the thing. There's still so much bias in the entertainment community, from producers on down. The same folks who are around 20, 30, 40 years ago are still in offices making the decisions, right? So it is a huge feat and a courageous move for a straight man to play a gay man, according to some folks.
Mhm.
But unbelievable for a queer man to play a straight man. Audiences will buy it. You know, look, Nathan Lane, Alan Cumming, they play straight men all the time. And we don't even think about it as much because a lot of time has passed since the Birdcage or whatever, or Cabaret or whatever they want to say. And I think ultimately it comes down to, can you tell the story accurately? I'll be honest, I'm guilty of it, because I will give Stanley Tucci a pass any day of the week to play a gay man, because I just can't get over how great he is in Devil Wears Prada and Burlesque. And I am guilty of it. There are some men that I'm like, I mean, he's fine.
Okay.
Like, he can come to the gay cookout, but I understand deeply, because I'm in it, it's my world, why it feels defeatist, or why we feel defeated as queer actors when a role that could be played by thousands of queer men goes to a straight man, because for years we were denied those roles.
Mhm.
No, and I'm glad that got brought up, because I actually wanted to talk about, obviously, as you just mentioned, with Rose being an all LGBTQ cast, which TJ actually told me just before this, so I thought that was great. I'm really excited for the film just based on what I've seen, but I'm even more excited to know that who the cast is as well too. And based on what you just said, there is, as we already said, we're glad to see that there's more representation in the media. You know, not just the younger generation, but you know, the whole world is going to see a wider representation than they did 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And I'm just curious though, like even based on your own experience, yes, there's more representation. We're going to see it in the media, but again, as you mentioned with Love Victor, maybe he's being played by a straight actor, of course, Tucci. And so I'm wondering if there's more of an impact when we see an LGBT character on the TV screen, and we know that they're also LGBT in the real life.
So a lot of it comes down to authenticity and subtle moments. I did a TV series called The Magicians. It aired on Sci-Fi, but I think now it's streaming on Netflix. So people really caught it during the pandemic on Netflix, and they're diehard fans. I did one episode where I played Javier, a magician from Spain. And by the way, this is like adult Harry Potter. It's like as if Harry Potter were in college. So there's sex, there's cursey words, it's all the things.
I'm actually a big fan.
Yeah. Oh, you are. So have you
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
that? Okay.
I've seen all the episodes and I already know where you're going with it. So it's funny now to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, we had to have there was a intimacy scene. There was no intimacy coordinator. It was the director, producer, and writer, and the actor and I in a room. And they were like, okay, and then you guys are just gonna like hook up. And there's in this scene, he's hooking up with me and someone else at the same moment in history at two different planets. Bear with me. The point of the story is they wanted to end with penetration. So we, between us as actors, marked out what we were going to do. And then he just got on top of me and they yelled cut, and they were like, so I'm sorry guys. So we want to end with penetration, because they couldn't understand that how you could penetrate someone if you're both male in a missionary position. They assumed gay men only had sex doggy style.
Mm.
And then there you are on set having
dull.
to explain the nitty gritty, never mind the idea of lube or any other components that would have come into play. And it was just awkward, you know? And I feel like there is subtle nuance and authenticity to queer folks playing queer stories, because especially if it's a writer who's not writing from their experience, they're writing because they saw an episode of Pose and now they think they can write for trans folks. And so by accident, they can step into some problematic language or scenarios without even knowing it, with trying to be a good ally. But the truth is, at this point, we have so many people who are capable of doing these positions, of creating these stories. Let them be the storytellers, at least for now, until we're all better versed. I think we can all write the straight story. Why? Because we have been indoctrinated since we were born to understand the concept of heterosexual love, romance, and sex.
Mm-hmm. And we had to live it kind of
Yes.
ourselves. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That being said, what's the pressure of, what was the pressure of being, I will say, a gay icon for so many young people that has kind of followed you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's twofold. It's like now I'm living in this nice little bubble where I'm just a working actor, and older folks remember Queer Eye. Latin folks will just kind of know because I've been in the ether, and their spidey senses go off when they see a Latin person, even if it's a guest star. So I'm famous to them. But I get to kind of slide, covertly in life now. I don't have like walking to a space and everyone knows who I am like during the Queer Eye days. And to be honest, with the Netflix series and Bros and possibly this new job, I'm a little nervous about that coming back because I genuinely don't like the attention. It's really hard to date, not because I'm bringing anything to the table, but what that experience feels like for a partner. I live very humbly. I try to just be a storyteller, and that's the gig, but it doesn't impact my value as a human. If I let it, I would feel like shit in the times that I don't work. Can I curse on this? I'm so sorry.
You absolutely can.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Johnson. Love saying that. For me, it's tricky holding space for let me say this, finding my voice and understanding what I was a part of accomplishing, because it was painful. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't always easy. They were real hits that I took, and still coming out unscathed, or seemingly so, years later, owning that it was important and powerful while also understanding the ugly underbelly of entertainment is tricky sometimes. However, I'm one of those people, I don't chase fame. It is occasionally a byproduct of some of the work I do, but isn't a given that it's always going to be there. And if you align your self-worth with how many views, likes, comments, posts, all the kind of stuff that social media leads you to believe, you're in big trouble. Like I rarely post to Instagram anymore. Like I just don't, it's not a goal. However, negotiating a contract, it's questioned. How many followers does he have? Because it's embedded PR for them. So there is this constant struggle of trying to be visible and letting people know what you're up to, which I never used to do because I thought it was arrogant. So I'd post something once and then people would discover it 2 years later streaming and like, you never told me. I'm like, I posted about it. Well, that doesn't mean everyone's going to see it. Having pride in your work, especially as an actor, it's a fine line. I think I used to see it as arrogance, but then it made me invisible for a lot of the bigger projects I wish people knew about. And to be honest, unless you have a publicist you're paying $4,000 a month for, you're not getting asked to be on talk shows. You're not on the cover of magazines. They don't come to you. I mean, unless you're a huge star, but if you're a huge star, you literally have a team pushing you for that. So when you get these opportunities, it's because someone put you up for it. And I don't think people are aware of that. Certainly if you're on Drag Race, you've written your ticket to free press for a year. But if you're on anything shy of that, good luck.
What has your mental health journey been like since Queer Eye?
Tricky. I mean, look, I have been pretty open about that and its impact in my cabaret shows. Would basically I tour with like a 90-minute show I used to. And it was kind of like a musical odyssey in the way that Moulin Rouge is, where the story's new, but the music is familiar. And, I'll be honest, I think I was really depressed in the times I didn't work. I worked right out of high school for 8 years solid in big, huge shows. And then I had pockets of time where I wasn't working and I wasn't set up for that mentally. I think people love to ask, so what are you up to now? And if you ain't up to shit, but you're auditioning all the time, it's a lot of first dates with no fucking. You feel like you're putting in all this work and effort and you're just not getting anywhere. No one told me that's normal. No one told me that there's thousands of actors who are working actors who have massive gaps in their careers, and that's normal. Sometimes there just isn't a role for you on the page this pilot season. And so you do other things. And so part of it for me was dating the therapist, 13 years ago, or however long it was, and getting into therapy myself and having to look at some of my stuff. And second to that was, June 29th will mark a year sober for me. And so part of my sobriety journey is a part of a 12-step program where I take a life inventory and I'm aware of my part in a lot of the things that I thought were really problematic. And because I was mostly looking at what other people did to me, but what I wasn't looking at was my response and what I did to contribute to the issues that I had. So that definitely folds in. Look, it's no shock to me that my life got insanely better the minute I got sober. On my 3-month sober anniversary, I booked my first lead in a major motion picture. I had all these just kind of these things that were just let me know. I mean, I could say that I would have had this maybe before, but I don't think so. And now I'm able to go out and do Pride and have people do every letter of the alphabet around me. It's not my ministry. I can go and people can drink in my home. I don't drink because I can play my tape forward. And no, I don't want a glass of wine. I would prefer 3 to 4 glasses of wine. And I might not be hungover or slurry the next day, but I just won't be myself. And I occupied so much of my life by being in nightlife and accepted by some folks. And I also drowned a lot of how I felt. Dr. Johnson asked about my mental health or one of you did. And that was a way to silence, Jennifer Hudson playing Effie in Dreamgirls. When I saw it, I immediately related to something her character says. She, she's down on her luck after getting kicked out of the girl group. And someone says to her something like, well, wait, what, how much money did you have? She's like, some X million dollars. And I blew it away drinking. Yes. Because she was so miserable about what had happened to her. And if I think back to the times where I'd be at a bar shooting the shit with someone and things weren't going well, it always would find its way in, and if things were different, I mean, all the other guys got $1 million endorsement deals and bought houses and I'd be financially secure. And if I only had social media back then, all the things that I could list, which were hurdles to my stability. I never once thought about the proactive steps that I wasn't taking. Never once crossed my mind because it was everyone else's fault. And so I think my mental health journey started with therapy. It landed in sobriety, which has been a real blessing for me. It's tricky. It's not something that I publicize or talk about all the time because A, I don't want other people weighing in on it. It's none of their business. I don't need you being like, well, maybe you'll drink at some point. Like, relax, I'm fine. And B, to be honest, your social life goes down the drain when people know they don't want to invite you to places because they think you're going to be counting their drinks. Your drinking is the last thing I'm worried about. I'm just here to have a good time. Dating has been tricky, especially for people who are maybe questioning their alcohol or drug intake. They find me triggering. Not because I'm saying or doing anything, but because I'm not partaking. So it's been a journey, right? And I'm at this weird station in life after 2 years of the isolation and not even, when the mask mandate and all that was lifted and vaccines, I still had to isolate because of fucking COVID while being on sets. If you test positive, you're out of the episode, and it's like, I need the job. So I find myself oftentimes alone at home or alone in a hotel room. It's not very easy to date like that. So it's been tricky, but I keep hoping and praying that all the kind of work that I've done on myself and the mindfulness of my contributions in every relationship, that will ultimately lead me to a place where I'm ready and open and willing to be a good partner to someone. I mean, I don't even know what that looks like. TJ and I've talked about the different shades of dating and the spectrums. And I think for now, what ideally mentally in this moment makes me feel safe or makes me feel like mentally grounded is the idea of having one partner in a monogamous relationship for this chapter, because I think there's an element of safety and security that I'm craving. Don't need my partner to be my end all. In fact, I'd like them to have a very rich and full life. This isn't a line of questioning you started, but I'm throwing it out there. You never know who's listening. And I feel like I want to be their personal porn star for at least the first chapter, and explore that safely with someone that I can tap into all those things with before any other ideas of what the shape of our relationship could do, because I just haven't had that in so long. but I think a lot of this all started with the therapy and then sobriety, and that's kind of my, I would say, the biggest mental health key points. I'm feeling very long-winded. I apologize.
No,
Nope,
I
all good
absolutely love
stuff.
it. And Alan and his soon-to-be husband in 11 days
Mhm.
are also polyamorous as well. So I love that you brought that up. But
Yeah.
Alan, I believe you and Rob were monogamous together and opened up and evolved your relationship together once you were secure with just both of you.
That's, I
So
Well,
think,
that
yeah, because talking to you, TJ, I think just understanding, I can't speak to what it'd be like after 3 years. I've only ever been in a relationship upwards of 3 years. So I don't know the shape of that. And I don't want to project because I see how it works for other folks. However, I think being a people pleaser, I would want to make my partner feel so comfortable that I would sacrifice what makes me feel safe in the efforts to please him and then build resentment.
mhm,
And what I would like to do is get to a place in my life where I have the opportunity to safely explore all the curiosities with someone who I know is going to be there, you know? And I don't know that I've had in the recent past any person that's been a constant figure in my life, boyfriend, friend, any of that in longer than I'd like to admit. So and that's part of being in the industry. There's transient, people move away, you get super close to a cast, and then you stop working together and it just all dissolves. So it's tricky, but it's something that by the way, congratulations on your upcoming
Mhm.
note.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and I I even love the word that you used too, is like that this would be the first chapter. And chapter can be relative. Like you might start on that chapter and that might be the chapter you stay on through the rest of the relationship. If that's what works for you and your partner, great. You know, that's the agreement that works for the both of you. But also sounds like you're open to evolve. Like you'll learn more about yourself over time as you get more secure in the relationship. You know, what you and your partner would talk about, then there will be a next chapter, but you're not, you know, thinking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I mean, I see that very applicable to sobriety. You know, when we think about being sober for a year, for 5 years, for 10 years, that might be overwhelming. So one of the big phrases in 12 step is just for today or one day at a time. So here you are taking it one chapter at a time. So let's start at the first chapter, see how that goes, and then we'll see if we start a new one.
Great. And so when you use the words polyamory, for the listener at home who might be a little confused, that is different than open, because polyamory would suggest that you are open to emotional connections with other folks.
Yeah, and
mhm,
that's how I would define it. That my partner and I both identify as polyamorous, and both of us are open to romantic connections with others. We currently are in a relationship with someone else, and we both have had separate love interests during our time together. And so I think open for me has been more of an umbrella term, and polyamory can fall underneath that. But yeah, polyamory having more of that specific notion that yes, we are together, we love each other, and we have the capability and ability or we agreement to love other people.
Hmm.
Yeah, the big umbrella term for all of it, for erotically open, for swinging, for polyamory, all of it is either consensual non-monogamy or ethical non-monogamy. And so yeah, so when we talk about polyamory, it's usually more romantic in context, but I mean, being sexually open, especially in the gay community, it's a little less taboo than
It still
polyamory.
just makes me so fucking anxious because I remember it brings me back. Oh my God, I have like two doctors. Oh God, two therapists here. Like this is where put on your therapist hats. Here we go, kids. This is something off for me. So immediately the first thought I had was my first circuit party with my first boyfriend. We were dating a year and a half. I was about to go on stage at this nightclub and he gave me a birthday card with like tickets to a show. I thought it said Allegria, and it was Ticketmaster ticket stubs. And I was like, oh my God, I love Cirque du Soleil. And he's like, no, it's a circuit party. And I had never been. And I was turning 21, and there was 2 blue pills in a little Ziploc. And I thought they were for like a hangover, like, ha ha ha, you can finally drink. And they were ecstasy at the time. And I was immediately overwhelmed, but I went on stage, did the show, and I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going to do this thing that melts your brain, according to Oprah. So like, I was really stressed out about it. And as we were dressing, I was like, what do I wear? He's like, jeans, no underwear. And I'm like, why no underwear? And he's like, in case someone wants to put their hands down their pants. immediate anxiety. Like immediately you're saying we're going into a space where it's accepted and expected that other people are going to engage in sexual acts with us, or there's going to be a level of sexuality that is outside of just us. And I'm going to have to endure that, was where my mind went. And the anxiety, that crippling anxiety that gave me in the moment, like, is awful. And that memory kind of, I have flickers of that vibe anytime I'm in a space where I'm dating someone and I feel like they are more open leaning, but they don't want to do it ethically. There's an arousal to having a boyfriend and then hooking up in the steam room. There's an arousal to having the secure, good on paper, great in Instagram boyfriend, me, and then hooking up with someone on a business trip because that's hot to them. And then finding out about that, I've always found that to be painful. And I think what I love about the consensual non-monogamy or ethical non-monogamy, that vibes with me, but I feel like I have to still practice being in a relationship with someone where, because I'm not the one to go through your phone. I'm not the one to go through your computer. I don't even want to ever touch your phone. Like, I want to make sure all the screens are closed, because I have seen things that I read into and then had to ask, and they were like, that was literally my brother texting me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't ever want to be that guy. But also, the older I get, it's like the dating pool gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I don't want to limit myself, but I also want to hold space for, there are things that make me feel safe right now, and there's also things that don't. And I would love a partner that kind of gets it and be willing to grow with me, even though they might have more experience in other areas.
Goosebumps. That is so
Am I
important.
selling myself well? TJ knows me. Dr. Johnson, do you think I'll get a boyfriend after this?
Absolutely, I'm sure they'll be lining up. And
Between
you hit the nail on the head.
You have to know someone.
I'll see what I can do.
All right.
Just buy that house in Dallas. I mean, half the gays here are realtors anyway.
That is the plan, I think. I think Dallas is kind of, I mean, other than the heat, but everyone said it's like living in Vegas, where you're not really like outside a whole lot. Everything's air conditioned, and
I wouldn't know. I've never been to Vegas.
Yeah. There you go.
Didn't you have a show there?
I did. I did a play there for 7 months. Supposed to be just 3, and then they extended, and they're still running. But I only did it for 7 months. But living there, getting used to the 115 degrees to 17 degrees, you're just not really outside a whole lot when it's that hot.
No, it's abusive, honestly.
Yeah, it's
really, the weather and I are in an abusive relationship. But to quote, the theme song, your old theme song, all things seem to be getting better for you. Yeah. I mean, listen, we talked extensively about my sober journey, and that was even just during the fall we're talking, and I just feel like here I am approaching a year, and I'm mindful. I'm just really present and mindful. I've always been aware, even when I did something that was, I don't like doing things I need a partner that's more adventurous, because I'm a rule follower. If it's yellow, I'm breaking. Like, I'm just that person. I don't like getting in trouble. I like to do things the right way. But the right way, I can sometimes self-impose, and it's not necessarily the way it has to be done. I've just told myself the story that it needs to be done that way, which boxes me in. So anytime I did something outside of that, I would torment myself about doing this wrong thing and always try to make it right. So life seems to be kind of, giving me a little bit more balance and a little bit more grace in those moments to just be human. Think doing a show like Queer Eye, where you tell the world you're a queer superhero that doesn't have flaws. That was a big part. Don't show the guys being flawed. Allowing some grace to just be a human who makes mistakes took a long time to learn, to know that I can be a trailblazer for some, and an icon, all these other things that I am to some folks, but that I can also be a human being first, and a highly flawed human. And that's okay too, that my work doesn't define me or my self-worth. Neither does my body. Like, I'm in great shape. I have like abs, and, I'm looking good shirtless, and that is not an ego thing. It's just, I feel like my self-worth is I don't feel any more valuable as a human now
than I did a year ago when I didn't look like this. And that's always been tricky to navigate, getting new attention from the same folks that looked past you before. And my body may ebb and flow and fluctuate, so will my career, but those things don't define who I am.
Mhm.
I love
Absolutely.
that.
Taking that authentic you wherever you go, regardless of, you know, the Netflix series, Bros, how you look. If you are happy with yourself at any shape or size, wherever you're at in your career, then absolutely, then you'll be good wherever you go.
Yeah, yeah, that's the hope. I mean, to be honest, that's just like the dream, you know, and I know it's a journey, and like we said, taking it one day at a time. And I think one of the biggest gifts that I've just been given this year was the opportunity to kind of really nurture new friendships and to spend the time in investing in other people, and just making sure I'm really present to that, because you know, as queer people, many of us have to have a family of choice. You know, I'm one of them. I don't have this you know, typical nuclear family set up, and so it's been something that I've struggled with for years. But I think taking that into my own hands and understanding that that needs to be nurtured is a new lesson that I'm learning.
Mm. So before we end, do you have any advice or words of encouragement or wisdom for the younger
Yeah.
gays that might be listening, the younger queer folk that might be listening,
Take
especially in entertainment? So young
yeah,
actors,
take up
dancers,
space.
singers.
Take up space. Be
Mm,
okay with taking up space. I was always concerned when I was younger of taking up space, of using my voice, of advocating for myself, of sharing my opinion. You could do all those things beautifully, lovingly, in a kind way, and still be you. I think when you're growing up, people tell you all the time, just be yourself. But the true definition of that we miss because we're so busy conforming to what we think we need to be or what we need to be more successful, which is ultimately sometimes not even in alignment with who we authentically are. I'm not saying don't do your job well, don't, you know, be rude. That's not it. I'm just saying know that the weird, quirky, queer things about you are the things that people, once they get to know, likely will celebrate. But if you downplay them or you have shame around them, then other people will take that as a cue to
absolutely.
downplay them and also have shame around
Hmm.
them. So it's like, you know, I remember I had this friend who never been to a gym a day in his life, gets all the ass, super confident, great to be around, gorgeous, and
Of course.
didn't fit the bill. And his bestie, gym body, Ken doll, you know, polar opposite dating lives,
Hmm.
because one of them just felt so secure in who they were, who they are, regardless of what the outside was doing, and the other didn't. And it was such an interesting experiment to see them
Huh.
both navigating life as individuals who were close friends. But it's your uniqueness, the things that we often criticize, critique about ourselves, that someone will just find special. And when your flaws become your superpower, that is a gift. It really is.
Mm. You described, you didn't describe yourself, but I'm guessing what people have described you as, a kind of a queer superhero.
Mhm.
And you kind of just hit the nail on the head there of, you know, fuck it, be a gay superhero
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if the
Because I think, look,
opportunity arises.
100%. And I think it's, you give people a beautiful gift. One of the great things is knowing that we did Queer Eye, especially when we did it in Dallas, in a lot of spaces that didn't like gay people, but they were cameras, so they gave us a pass. We were famous, so they gave us a pass.
Hmm.
And ultimately, we changed hearts and minds by just being ourselves because we didn't know any better. We're from New York City in this bubble where everyone accepted us. So we weren't used to like any backlash. And we came into it like, oh, you're going to love me. No, you're seriously going to love me. This is going to be fine. There was no room for conversation. You know,
Yeah.
we were taking up space. We were welcoming and ushering ourselves into the most intimate rooms in your household, your bedroom, your kitchen, your living room, wherever you have your TV, and making you laugh. And so you forgot who we love or whatever, and you were more just entertained. Now, that was a vehicle or a tool that worked at that time. And it was a small stepping stone that allowed so many other creative folks to tell stories in more vibrant ways. And I'm thankful for this younger generation. You know, I mean, it's not a life I thought I would be living. I mean, look around me. I'm like, I got hobbies once I got sober. You know, I'm just starting to now date again, like to go on dates and not have them be loaded with like, where's this going? Are we hooking up? Like, it's just going and being present, you know, and that being enough. And you know, now knowing that Dr. Johnson is going to hook me up with someone, I just feel so at ease.
There you go. Absolutely. No, and I mean, you already said it as well. And you said it well, that, you know, when you're being yourself, when you're just be you, it's a lot easier when you don't have to play a role. You don't have to, you know, I'm doing this to appease the person. Yeah.
With me, I know a lot of people need to spend time with me if they're familiar with my name, because it's different than who I am. I get paid to do something that is sometimes televised. That's not my that's not who the fullness of who I am. But I can't be in relationships with people who put me on such a high pedestal. I'll never even live up to that. You know, that's never gonna be. I'm not gonna be the one on every red carpet. I'm probably this job I'm up for. I'm probably gonna miss the premiere of the Netflix series, the first movie red carpet, because I'm working. You know, I'm not a fancy bougie guy. I am the one who will wait online at a gay club, like especially during Queer Eye. Like, just go tell a door guy who you are. I'm like, no, I would never. If he knows, if they see me, and that's one thing. But I'm not the one to do stuff like that. And so, with dating me, it's really tricky because a partner needs to be aware of Jay the human, and then the job that Jay is being paid to do. And they don't, you know, I'm not the character that people would ever. I don't. Yeah, I have a very normal outlook on life.
This is why actors date other actors.
And I never have, and maybe that's the solution.
I mean, Alan, do you know any other actors?
Not at the top of my head, but like I said, I'll look around.
Ask the husbands, the husband and boyfriend.
Will do. I'll use my network.
Sweet.
Love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know we got really, really in depth, and I'm so grateful. And
by the way, I think you saw me. I did go on a date with a guy in Dallas, and when really like hung out with. He came to visit recently, and it was lovely. Dallas.
I was like, we had breakfast, but
you're like literally with two men. I don't know. You could probably have a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. However. There's something really different about the Dallas folks, and I can't put my finger on it. I wouldn't say it's like a Southern thing, but everyone was really nice and unaffected. I don't know, just seemed like a real like kind, generous vibe I got from Dallas folks. And maybe that's just the folks I encountered.
Well, I'd say that's true. So yeah, but more of a enticing reason to come on down and get a house here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Or at least to come visit, look at houses.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I know
right.
a fantastic real estate agent.
If I don't book this series, which I'd have to be in Vancouver July 6th, I told myself I'm gonna take myself like on a little trip to Dallas so we can all grab lunch or something.
There you go. Anthony, if you're listening, we have a client for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we will let you get back to your tarantulas and your dragons and your betas.
Oh my God, all the things.
All the things. And thank you, Dr. Johnson. I know you're feeling a little under the weather, but thank you for joining us. And this has been Navigating Chaos, a modern mental health podcast. And thank you all for listening.